Folks, how are we doing? Welcome back to the second installment of MMA Today. Today's episode, I'm going to be kicking it off by asking you guys a question. Something that I've been seeing online, something that happened recently that's pretty big in the UFC world. The UFC and WWE officially had like their joint merger partnership thing. And I've been seeing like a lot of people talk about how, what this could mean for the UFC. Some people talked about maybe like it would be cool if like fighters had like their own custom walkouts, like with like fireworks and stuff, and they'd walk out with their belts, like kind of some WWE stuff. But on a bigger scale, people are saying that like just how big this is for the UFC. I personally don't understand like what people mean or what people are saying when they say like this is very big, or like people don't realize like how important this is for the UFC and the progression of the sport. So if any of you guys that are watching this could please enlighten me, let me know in the comment section below. I'm not saying this because like I'm trying to sound like whatever. I genuinely just don't know. So yeah, I'm curious. What does this mean? Like, how is this actually really big? Other than like I could see this would be good for like fighters when they retire, they want to get away from fighting. They could go into like the WWE, and it's still like contractually a super smooth, easy transition. I could also see, just the crossover, the potential like crossover for like promotion of events, how big that could be. And the fan bases are probably pretty similar. So, I mean, it's good to like, pull from their bucket of, fans and try to grow each other's fan bases and audiences. I can see that, but I mean, is that what it is, or is it something bigger? If someone could please enlighten me, or if you guys could let me know, that would be fantastic. So that is how I wanted to kick off this episode. A lot of stuff's happened in the MMA world since the last episode. There was a few fights that got announced. Actually, I think this first fight was announced before the first episode rather. But the Yuri Prochazka and Alex Pereira fight, that's going to be on the John Jones card in November. I was looking up tickets to see how much they were, because I thought about maybe potentially going to that. Just because that card is like history. You think about, I mean, John Jones could be one of his last, if not potentially his last fight. I don't think it'll be his last fight, but it's definitely one of his last. And he's fighting Stipe Miocic, who is the caliber of fighter he is, the heavyweight GOAT. That would be a very cool fight to see, but the tickets were insane. I think the cheapest ticket I saw was like $600. I take that back. I want to say it was probably close to like $800-900. I don't know, but regardless, either way, completely out of my budget, not feasible. But it would have been cool, because that historically would be a very important fight in MMA history. Looking back, so it'd be a cool fight to go to. That's what I'm trying to do, is like line up fights that I think are going to be historical fights, or that are going to impact history, or just going to be big in the history of the sport. I want to try to go to those fights, but I'm not going to make it to that card. But that fight's going to be sick. Having the John Jones-Stipe fight as the main event, and then the Pereira and Prochazka light heavyweight championship fight. That fight's going to be insane. I saw someone say that like this is going to be the easiest fight in the world for Yuri Prochazka. He's going to win like, just like a knife slicing through butter. I forget where I think someone actually was talking about it on a podcast. They just regurgitated it, but I don't see that at all. Quite honestly, I think Alex Pereira beats Yuri. I think Yuri's a little too wild. He might walk into something and get knocked out. Regardless though, I like both fighters. I think it's going to be cool to see whoever wins. It'd be cool to see Pereira win, because he would be a 2-division champ. And both those guys, they have like combined 9 UFC fights or something like that, which is pretty crazy. Yuri's only had like 3. Pereira's had like 4 or 5. I'm not exactly sure. Actually, it might be 6. No, he's had 6, and Yuri's had 3. Something like that, yeah. But it's crazy that where those guys are at in the UFC and in the division, with the like a little amount of fights that they've had. Pretty crazy. But some of the other fights, let me see if I can pull this up, because I have it on my computer here. some of the other fights that got announced. A lot of big fights for the December card. UFC 296. As of right now, it's going to be headlined by Edwards and Covington for the welterweight title. The reason I say as of right now, this was supposed to be the card that Conor and Chandler are fighting on. Now, there's the whole thing with Conor missed the USADA deadline and that he's not eligible to fight in 2023, but then there's been also cases or instances of people say like it is possible, there's ways around it, he can fight in 2023. I saw Conor talk about his training camp has begun. Same thing with Michael Chandler. Michael Chandler posted about like first day of training camp, something like that. So I think it could be possible that that fight still gets announced, but they're probably going to hold off on that a little bit just to, I don't know, for the surprise element maybe. But I also think that I could see Sean O'Malley and potentially somebody headlining this card in December. Who I think he would fight, I'm not sure. I could see, I mean, I think the obvious thing for a while after the UFC 292 fight was it was going to be Cheeto. But I could see Sean pulling away from that, and I think he could just be teasing him and be like, oh yeah, you're going to fight for the belt, and then just be like, psych, and then go fight someone else. I think he could be fighting Cejudo, because he talked about beforehand how he wanted, when Cejudo and Sterling were fighting, he wanted Cejudo to win because stylistically it's a better fight for him. And I think it probably is a good matchup for him, just how rangy long Sean is and how short Cejudo is. And if you look at how much Sean's been going at Cejudo on social media, he's been going at him a lot more than pretty much anyone else in the division, which makes me think that he's trying to poke at something or promote something potentially. I don't know. But he's talked about how he's hinted at that there's basically been a fight that's like worked out or in the works. So we'll see. Who knows? Maybe it's him. Maybe it's not. Maybe they do put him on this card, but it's not headlining. Although I think he would headline just because numbers. UFC is all about numbers, and he wouldn't be the biggest draw out of all these guys. And that's not it. I mean, you just look at the numbers that he did, and also the UFC putting out like his fight the day of, which they never do. All that sort of stuff. But the other fights that are on this card, we have the Flyweight Championship, Pantoja Royval 2. This is a very interesting fight. I'd like to see Brandon Royval win. To be honest, I'd have to do a little more research. I probably need to rewatch their first fight. If I remember correctly, I think Pantoja won. I'm not 100% sure. Don't quote me on that. But I need to go back and rewatch that. And I think that'll be an exciting fight, though. I like Royval's I can't talk. Royval's style. He's got a very fun, exciting style. They also announced Tony Ferguson and Paddy Pimblett. This is a very interesting matchup. Tony Ferguson's on a very bad losing streak right now. I think it's like 5 fights. It's not good, considering the win streak that he was going on before. He was on like a 12-fight win streak, which was insane. He was the boogeyman tearing through everybody. Then he's been on the skid where he just seemed like a shell of himself. Doesn't seem like the Tony Ferguson, the El Cucuy that we know. Which could just be Father Time catching up. Happens to a lot of fighters, and then some fighters just don't know when to step away. But Paddy Pimblett, what seems like a solid dude. Probably not a bad guy. He's a funny guy, whatever. But as a fighter, the guy's a fraud. A little bit of a fraud. That last fight against Jared Gordon, I don't think he won. Now there's gonna be people that get mad, and there's gonna be people in the comments. There might be a few people that side with me. There's probably gonna be a lot of people that get mad in the comments for me saying this. Paddy Pimblett's a fraud. I genuinely think, I don't know what Tony's ranked, maybe like 10, 12, something like that. If he fights anybody in the top 10 for sure in the lightweight division, if Paddy fights anybody in the top 10 for sure, he's getting murked. I think Tony Ferguson still is a tough matchup for him, because I don't know. I think Ferguson can probably keep up with Paddy's grappling. Ferguson's definitely a better striker, 100%. And Ferguson doesn't even look like that bad of a striker in some of his fights as of late. Like, he really doesn't look that bad. Like, he still can move, like, but he's not the same. But I think he's a better striker than Paddy Pimblett. And God, I would love to see Tony Ferguson be the guy to beat Paddy Pimblett in the UFC, and Paddy Pimblett be the guy that Tony Ferguson gets back on the winning track. Hopefully he just wins and retires after that. That'd be awesome. But good matchmaking by the UFC, honestly. Interesting fight. Very interesting fight. I don't know if lines have been put out for this fight yet, betting lines. But I'm curious to see what those lines would be and who would be the favorite in this matchup. UFC also announced Stephen Thompson versus Shavkat Rakhmonov. This is going to be a very interesting fight as well. Stylistically, I think it's a tough matchup. Well, Stephen Thompson is a tough matchup for just about anybody. Rakhmonov does have a good grappling base, a good wrestling base as well. So I could see him try to implement that a lot more in this fight. But Stephen Thompson is a very elusive guy. He's hard to get a hold of. I think it's an interesting fight because Stephen Thompson's old. He probably he's not gonna. Maybe he might fight for a title if he beats someone like Shavkat, and then I don't know how you get it. You probably lose to whoever the next person fights. But anyways, I don't know. It's interesting because Stephen Thompson's kind of like at this like gatekeeper position right now. I think it's an interesting fight. I would be interested to see if Stephen Thompson is like a massive underdog. If Rakhmonov is like minus 275, minus 300 or higher, I'd probably put some money on Stephen Thompson. I think it's an interesting fight, but we'll see how that plays out. We got till December. I just hope that everybody can be healthy and actually make it to December, because that is half the battle. That was what I was super nervous about when I went to UFC 292. I was like so nervous that I spent this money on tickets and then like something would happen. I could really care less. The whole card was stacked, so I could really care less if any of the undercard prelim fights, if any of those fell out. I really wouldn't be too bummed because there's a bunch of other really good fights. But I would have been so bummed if the main event got pulled. If something happened and I bought tickets because I wanted to see the main event. That's the scariest thing sometimes with buying tickets for these UFC events. It's kind of a gamble in that sense, where you could have one fight that you're really hoping to see, spend the money on tickets, and then something happens, fighter gets injured, and you're still probably gonna see like a really good card. Like, it's not that bad, but it's kind of a bummer because there's one fight that you want to see and then you can't see it. But oh well. Hopefully, knock on wood, that doesn't happen. I don't even know why I'm talking about that. But I did think about that a lot. That was my anxiety up until UFC 292 in August. But fights yesterday, we had the Fiziev and Gamrot card, which is a pretty decent card. There was a few finishes. It kind of started out slow and then started to pick up with the finishes. Off the bat, I'm trying to think of some fights that stood out to me. The Muhammad Usman Jake Collier fight, that was a pretty action-packed fight. Jake Collier came out pretty hot in the first round, and then after that eye poke, I think something changed. I don't know if just Usman was kind of thinking in that break, because there was like a solid 5-6 minutes of time off in the middle of a fight, and then after that time off, Usman just came out working that jab, and then it was pretty much he swung the whole momentum of the fight in his favor. Unfortunate ending to the Corey Ruddage Jacob Malkoun fight, because I had money on Jacob Malkoun and I thought that was easy, but I even talked about that last week in the podcast. I was like, you should bet on Jacob Malkoun. He got disqualified, illegal strike. Kind of sucks, but I don't think Cody Brundage wants to win in that way either. Andre Fialho, Tim Means, that was a pretty good fight. Fialho got knocked out again, unfortunately, but that was a pretty action-packed fight, very exciting fight. The Miles Johns Dan Argueta fight, I didn't get to see too much of that, but Miles Johns won that fight. Charles Jourdain submits Ricardo Ramos. I love Charles Jourdain. I said this in the previous podcast, but his style is very fun to watch. He's very dangerous on both his feet and on the ground. I'm surprised they submitted somebody like Ricardo Ramos, but props to him. That was a solid win. Brian Battle beat AJ Fletcher. Brian Battle's also another dude that I think is a beast. I'm interested to see how he's going to compete against some of the top ranked guys in the welterweight division. I don't think I could be wrong, but I don't think he's like championship material, but I think he could hang up there and be a tough a tough guy in the top 10 for a little bit. Marina Rodriguez put on a clinic against Michelle Waterson. She was busting her up really bad towards I think it was the end of that first round. She had her busted up. No, yeah, that first round for sure, because that was in 10-8. Yeah, she beat the snot out of poor Michelle Waterson. But that was an excellent performance by Marina Rodriguez. Bryce Mitchell got the dub over Dan Ige. Bryce Mitchell's just got an insane style, and I think Dan Ige, I don't know, the UFC really tried to promote him pretty hard. I think I even touched on this on the last pod, but I think the UFC just kind of did him a disservice because they rushed him really hard, really early, and then he picked up some losses, and then I don't know what that does to a fighter's confidence, but also I don't know, he did I think get it was a good fight. It was back and forth. He did bust up Bryce Mitchell's eye, but I think Bryce Mitchell just ultimately his wrestling pressure and relentless pace and just the constant pressure that he puts on. That's hard to overcome, especially when you're constantly on the defense. And then in the main event, unfortunate ending with Rafael Fiziev pretty much injuring his knee. I don't know what the extent of the knee injury was, but you hate to see that. I hate to see a fight end like that. But I know some people that bet on Gamrot, so nice way to win some money. All around them, not a bad card. Not I wouldn't say card of the month. I was trying to think earlier because that was all the end of fights in September. What I would rank as the best card of the month, and it was, I don't know. UFC Noche was pretty good. I would say it's either UFC Noche or the Strickland Adesanya card, but I to be honest with you, I'd have to go back and watch some of those fights off both of those cards and kind of decide. But both UFC Noche there was a lot of good fights. Might even lean towards that. But yeah, unfortunate ending in the main event, but cool prelims. This next weekend we have the Grant Dawson Bobby Green card. Let me see if I can pull up some of the fights on there. I think main event wise, I think Grant Dawson's gonna win probably pretty handedly. But let me check out the prelims. You got Diana Belbita and Karolina Kowalkiewicz, Nate Maness, and forget the guy. His first name is maybe it's Madoncha, and flyweight, and then Montel Jackson, Chris Gutierrez. Chris Gutierrez is very good. I'm gonna probably be picking Chris Gutierrez in this. Is this John Munoz? I'm not 100% sure. Jay Munoz, and then Arlene. I'm gonna butcher that, so I'm not gonna say that. But I'm not sure who to pick in this fight, to be honest. Vanessa Demopoulos and Kay Murata. Probably go with Vanessa Demopoulos. She's got a very exciting style. Fortunately, Joe Rogan will not be here for this card, so she won't be able to jump in his arms. But probably pick Vanessa. Joaquin Buckley and Alex Morono. That's an interesting fight. Because, I don't know what it is. I'm just not the biggest fan of Joaquin Buckley. But Alex Morono's got an interesting style. He like reminds me of like a kid at like if you were at a pool, and he's like a kid that would wear like the swimming shirt when he'd go swimming and have like a total farmer's tan. I don't know if anybody's gonna even get my reference there, but he's just a very pasty white guy, dorky looking guy, but he totally kicked my ass. But I don't know who to pick in that fight. Joaquin Buckley's very, very tough. I don't want to have like my bias because I'm not a big fan of him and be like, I think Morono will win. He's a very tough fighter. I don't know. I'm curious what the line is on that. Iwan Kutalaba and Felipe Lins. That's an interesting fight as well. I'm probably gonna go with Felipe Lins. He's been looking good at light heavyweight. That'll be an interesting fight as well. Bill Algeo and Alex Hernandez. That's an interesting fight. Probably going to go with Alex Hernandez. Not the biggest fan of him either. If any of you guys remember that fight that he had with Cowboy Cerrone, that was the best instance of karma being served up a very good instance of karma being served up in the UFC. And then I'm not sure who R. Glenn is, but they're facing Drew Dober, who I know who Drew Dober is. That'll be an interesting fight. Drew Dober probably win. He might even be a massive favorite because I'm not super familiar with who this guy is. I'm looking at this the card right now, and it's only showing like B Green, like the first initial, last name. So I'm not getting the full name on some of these. But the co-main event, you have Abdul Razak Al Hassan and Joe Pfeiffer. Joe Pfeiffer's probably definitely going to win that. But Abdul Razak Al Hassan, if you guys are familiar on some of my older podcasts, he is on the all-time fade list. Never, ever, 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 ever will I bet on Abdul Razak Al Hassan. I remember when he had his comeback to the UFC, like 2020, 2021. I would bet on him like a bunch. I bet on him like 2 or 3 times in a row, and every single time he like lost like 3 fights in a row. Lost me a good amount of bets. He was like the last leg on a parlay a bunch of times. Yeah, it wasn't good. But Joe Pfeiffer will probably win. I wouldn't be surprised if he knocks him out. Bobby Green, Grant Dawson, he's probably gonna win pretty handily. I mentioned that earlier. Has a pretty solid record, 20-1, with 1 no contest or 1 draw, perhaps. Yeah, I remember after his last fight, he wanted everybody to be like, damn, that kid was good. He had a pretty solid performance in that fight, and I think he'll probably put on a pretty solid performance again in this fight. Curious what the line is on that, but I imagine him being a pretty decent favorite, at least minus 200 and up. But yeah, pretty okay card. I would say it's stacked. I would say like the main event is the only fight that I would be super excited to see. And yeah, man, to be honest, that's not really the fight that I'm like, oh yeah, that to me would be like a main card opener on another fight night, in my opinion. But I don't know, yeah, pretty lacking card. But sometimes these are the cards that always surprise you and end up being really good. So who knows? We'll see. Got UFC Bellator 300 that night as well, which might be Bellator's last big event, but I'll probably be tuning in and watching that. You got Kat Zingano and Chris Cyborg fighting. You also have Usman Nurmagomedov fighting against Brett Primus. Usman Nurmagomedov is actually very, very good. I'm curious what's going to happen, like when Bellator, because everybody's saying Bellator is going to go under. So I'm curious what happens with a lot of these, like some of the guys that are actually pretty decent in Bellator, like Usman Nurmagomedov, like AJ McKee, Patchy Mix, some of those guys that are pretty decent. I wonder if how many of them are going to end up in the UFC and how they'll fare in the UFC. That'll be quite interesting. But I'll probably be watching, I'll probably tune in on Bellator 300 as well. I might be double screening it. I might even do a watch party. I could have a watch party for both of these. I'm trying to see if there's any other. Oh, Bryce Meredith is fighting on this card. Bryce Meredith is a training partner, an All-American wrestler, training partner of Sean O'Malley as well. Very solid grappler from what I hear. Kai Kamaka, former UFC fighter. Ryan Bader, Lynn Vessel. They got 4 championship fights. Whole main card is championship fights. That's pretty interesting. But yeah, so honestly, Bellator is a better card than UFC next weekend. Kind of hate to see it, but I'll be tuning into both. So let me know which card you guys are most excited for in the comment section below. What do you guys think is gonna happen to? Who would you guys like to see from Bellator in the UFC? That's interesting because I'm curious what's gonna happen with that, because it seems like Bellator is gonna go under. PFL isn't gonna buy them. Which I could get. That's a whole nother spiel I could get into. That could be a whole podcast in and of itself. But a lot of people are like a lot of different organizations trying to do things, make moves. Like there was that one something. Was there like a Saudi company that put a bunch of money into PFL? A lot of people like one championship. One championship is good, but I think they have like a good thing going on where they have like different martial arts, where they have Muay Thai, Jiu-Jitsu, and sometimes they'll have a card where they mix all that together. I think that's great. I wish that was actually more commercialized in the US, that was more mainstream. So I think that would be like Muay Thai in and of itself is very, very exciting. I love watching Muay Thai, kickboxing, even some of the Jiu-Jitsu matches are pretty entertaining as well. I wish that was a little more mainstream in the US, but I think it's going to be hard for any organization to really compete with the UFC because there's just a lineage, the history in the UFC. And like I said, this is a whole topic, so I don't want to get into this because this could literally be a whole podcast. But when people look back, like at there's all those different titles in boxing, but like the one you really want to have is the lineal title. You want to beat the guy that beat the guy that beat the guy. Like you can have all these titles, but like it's like when who was it? Anthony Joshua had like all the heavyweight belts. I'm trying to think of like a good example of boxing, but he never beat Tyson Fury. He never fought Tyson Fury. So it's like that kind of same thing. Like it could be I don't know. I just think history, lineage, looking back to the guys that were the man, some of the best of all time. When you think like the belts that Khabib Nurmagomedov, that George St. Pierre, that Anderson Silva, that John Jones held, all those guys are some of the best fighters in the world, and they all fought in the UFC. I think there's the lineage, the history. UFC will always be the cream of the crop for that matter. And that's where I'm going to end off this episode of MMA Today, the second installment. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know in the comment section below, what does it mean for the UFC and the WWE that they merged? Let me know who you got in the Dawson and Green that main event, who you guys got in Bellator 300, and what topics do you guys want to see? What do you guys want me to talk about? Let me know in the comment section below. Like, comment, and subscribe. Till next time, I'll catch you guys later.